Imagine a desert night, silent and endless, where the stars above shimmer with an unusual clarity, as though the universe itself is pausing to watch. In this vast emptiness of Nevada, a story was born, one that continues to haunt science, government secrecy, and the imagination of millions. This is not just another tale of UFOs or hidden bases. This is the story of a man who stood at the edge of the unknown, who dared to speak when silence was safer, a man named Bob Lazar. Tonight, we revisit his return through the eyes of filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, and in doing so, we invite you to drift into a mystery that might follow you into your dreams. Bob Lazar is no ordinary name. For decades, his testimony has lingered in the air like smoke from a fire no one dares to extinguish. He is the reluctant whistleblower, the man who claimed he worked in the shadows near Area 51, reverse engineering alien technology. His words were not meant to make him famous. They were meant to save his life. Yet in speaking them, he changed the conversation forever. He forced the world to look toward the desert with new eyes, to wonder what secrets were buried in hangars and laboratories far from public view. Nevada's desert is more than sand and silence. It is a shield, a vast cloak where the government hides its deepest projects. Somewhere beyond the fences and warning signs lies the infamous Area 51, a place whispered with equal parts fear and fascination. But Bob Lazar didn't speak only of Area 51. He described a smaller, more secret location nearby, known as S4. Hidden near Papoose Lake, it was here that he claimed to have seen technology not of this earth. Within hangars carved into the hillside, he said 9 craft were stored, each one beyond the limits of human engineering. He described propulsion systems that bent gravity, reactors powered by a mysterious fuel known as Element 115. At the time, this element did not even exist on our periodic table. To skeptics, it was proof of his fabrication. To believers, it was a glimpse into a suppressed reality. Picture for a moment what Lazar claimed he saw. Metallic discs resting in dimly lit hangars, their surfaces reflecting light with an alien perfection, their interiors built for beings not quite like us. They were not aircraft in any familiar sense. They were machines that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics themselves. In 1989, Bob Lazar decided to speak. He was nervous, fearful, and uncertain, but he believed silence would cost him more than truth. Sitting down with investigative journalist George Knapp, he first appeared under a pseudonym, his face shadowed, his voice altered. But soon the disguise was dropped, and the world learned his name. The impact was immediate. Some believed him without hesitation. Others mocked him as a fraud. But whether believer or skeptic, no one could ignore him. He told of a craft that generated its own gravitational field, a reactor that pulled space-time itself, making distances irrelevant. He spoke not of rockets or engines, but of physics humanity had yet to master. To some, his words sounded like the plot of science fiction. To others, it was the most important scientific disclosure of our time, but coming forward carried a cost. Lazar claimed he was followed, harassed, his life placed in danger. His records vanished. His supposed education at MIT and Caltech was erased. His employment records at Los Alamos National Laboratory disappeared. Critics seized upon this, calling him a liar who had invented his past. Yet others found fragments, an old phone directory, a news article, a trace of his name, that hinted he was not lying entirely. This battle between believer and skeptic has defined Lazar's life. For many, he is either a prophet of hidden truths or a master of deception. But one undeniable fact remains. His story has never gone away. Decades later, when his name might have faded, filmmaker Jeremy Corbell stepped forward. Fascinated by mysteries and driven to capture voices on the fringe of reality, Corbell sought Lazar not as a curiosity, but as a witness. In his documentary, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, he brought Lazar's words to a new generation. Through Corbell's lens, Lazar was no longer the young man of 1989, but an older, weary figure, one who regretted speaking yet still carried the weight of what he had seen. Lazar did not appear as a man chasing fame. He appeared as someone haunted, a man whose life had been disrupted by revelations he wished he could forget. But Corbell's film reminded the world that this story was not over. If anything, it was only just beginning. Among Lazar's most startling claims was his description of Element 115. In the late 1980s, it was unheard of. Scientists dismissed it outright. Yet years later, in 2003, it was officially synthesized. Today, it sits on the periodic table under the name Moscovium. The version known to us is unstable, vanishing in milliseconds, but Lazar described a stable isotope that powered alien craft. Was this a coincidence or a vindication? If he was lying, how could he have predicted an element not discovered until years later? The lines blur between what we know and what we cannot prove. Skeptics argue that his story lacks evidence, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Believers point to the consistency of his account, the courage it took to speak, and the accuracy of details that science later confirmed. The truth seems to sit in a shadow, unreachable yet undeniable. Beyond the debate, Lazar's words transformed culture itself. His testimony inspired films, novels, and countless discussions. From television shows like The X-Files to late-night radio programs that explored the unknown, his influence stretched further than even he might have imagined. And quietly, governments began to change. The Pentagon, once dismissive of UFOs, began releasing information about unidentified aerial phenomena. Pilots came forward with stories of craft defying physics. It was as though the world was catching up to Lazar's claims, piece by piece. But through all of this, Lazar never sought to capitalize on fame. He never became rich from his story. Instead, he retreated into a quiet life, running a business far removed from the glare of media. And yet, the story clung to him. The more the world turned toward the skies with questions, the more his name returned. As Jeremy Corbell brought Lazar back into the spotlight, audiences worldwide once again faced the question, what if he was telling the truth all along? What if the secrets of propulsion, of interstellar travel, of civilizations beyond our own, are hidden not in the stars, but right here on Earth, locked behind the gates of bases in the Nevada desert? This is the paradox of Bob Lazar. He is both an ordinary man and a symbol of the extraordinary, a figure ridiculed by many, respected by some, and impossible to forget. And as you listen to his story, drifting in the calm of this narration, you may feel yourself caught between belief and doubt, between science and imagination. Tonight, you are not asked to decide what is true. You are only invited to imagine the hangars at S4, the craft resting silently in the dark, the hum of reactors bending the very fabric of space-time. To imagine a man burdened by a truth too heavy to carry, yet too dangerous to keep hidden. And as we reach the end of this first part of our journey, remember that the story is not finished. In the next part, we will follow Lazar's return through Corbell's eyes more deeply, exploring how this mystery continues to shape the world today, and how it might reshape the very way we see ourselves in the universe. For now, let the desert remain in your mind, endless, silent, and filled with secrets, and let the voice of Bob Lazar echo softly, reminding us that truth, once spoken, never truly disappears. When Jeremy Corbell set out to bring Bob Lazar's story back to the surface, he knew he was walking into dangerous territory. Not dangerous in the physical sense, though Lazar had often spoken of threats and intimidation, but dangerous in the sense of credibility. To step into Lazar's world meant stepping into a battlefield where skeptics and believers had drawn their lines decades earlier. Yet Corbell moved forward, not to convince the world of aliens, but to remind people of the man behind the mystery. Through his lens, Lazar was revealed not as a hero, not as a fraud, but as a human being. Someone who had stumbled into a reality most of us can hardly imagine, and who had carried the weight of that knowledge for years. In the documentary, you can see Lazar's unease. He does not bask in the attention. He does not push his story for profit or fame. If anything, he looks like a man haunted by what he knows, a man wishing he had never spoken in the first place. And yet he cannot escape the truth of his own words. What makes Corbell's approach so effective is the atmosphere he creates. This is not just an interview or a retelling of old claims. It is an immersion into a mystery. The film moves slowly, deliberately, as though inviting viewers to drift into Lazar's world, to sit with him in the silence of the desert, to imagine the weight of secrets that stretch far beyond the horizon. It is not the story of a man chasing aliens. It is the story of how a single voice can unsettle governments, challenge science, and capture the human imagination. The return of Bob Lazar through Corbell is more than just a film. It is a cultural reminder that questions remain unanswered. It forces us to look back at what Lazar said decades ago and ask why so many details still linger unresolved. Why do governments continue to dance around the subject of unidentified craft? Why do military pilots come forward with accounts of technology that mirrors what Lazar described long before? And why, even today, does the stigma of UFOs remain so strong, as though someone wants us not to ask too many questions? Lazar's story has always carried a strange consistency. For over 30 years, his account has remained the same. Most people who lie eventually trip over their own words, adjusting details as time erodes memory. But Lazar's story has not shifted. From the very beginning, he has described the same hangars, the same crafts, the same reactor powered by Element 115. This unwavering consistency has given believers fuel, while skeptics dismiss it as a rehearsed fabrication. But the question persists. How many fabrications can remain this steady for so long? Jeremy Corbell's film captures this tension beautifully. We see Lazar not as a polished speaker, but as a reluctant witness. His hesitations, his unease, his reluctance to dive into certain details, these are not the traits of someone chasing attention. They are the traits of someone who feels trapped by the truth he carries. Corbell himself has said that Lazar did not want to make the film. He agreed only reluctantly, feeling the burden of reopening a chapter he wished had closed long ago. And yet, by doing so, he reignited a conversation that continues to grow louder with every passing year. There is a scene in the documentary where Lazar breaks down, overwhelmed by the weight of what he has carried. It is not the breakdown of an actor performing a role. It feels raw, genuine, like the release of years of pressure. Watching it, you begin to understand that whether or not every detail of his story is accurate, the impact on his life is undeniably real. He has lost opportunities, faced ridicule, endured harassment, and still, after all these years, he carries the same account. For the audience, this becomes less about proving aliens and more about understanding the cost of truth. What does it mean to live a life where the world sees you as a symbol rather than a person? What does it mean to hold knowledge that cannot be proven, yet refuses to be forgotten? These are the questions that linger long after the credits roll. Beyond the film, Lazar's return has had another effect. It has coincided with a growing wave of disclosure. In recent years, governments have released declassified videos of unidentified aerial phenomena. Navy pilots have described encounters with objects that move in ways no human technology can replicate. Officials have admitted, for the first time in history, that something is in our skies that cannot be explained. And when these revelations are placed alongside Lazar's testimony, the parallels are difficult to ignore. Imagine for a moment that Lazar's words were true, that decades ago he was indeed working with technology far beyond our own. If that is the case, then what we are seeing now, the official acknowledgement of mysterious craft, is only the surface of a much deeper truth. The world might be closer than ever to confirming what Lazar tried to reveal. And if that day comes, history will remember him not as a liar, but as the man who told us before we were ready to listen. The beauty of Corbell's film is that it does not try to provide answers. Instead, it invites you into the uncertainty. It allows you to sit with the questions, to feel the pull of curiosity without demanding a conclusion. In this way, it mirrors the experience of life itself. So much remains unknown. So much lies beyond the horizon of our understanding, and yet we continue to search. Bob Lazar's return through Jeremy Corbell is not the end of a story. It is a continuation, a reminder that mysteries are not meant to be solved in a single lifetime. They are meant to inspire us, to push us toward the stars, to make us wonder what else might be waiting beyond the reach of our eyes. And as you listen now, drifting into the calm of this narration, perhaps you too can feel that pull, the quiet reminder that we are part of something larger, something stranger, something infinitely more mysterious than we can comprehend. The desert remains silent. The hangars, if they exist, remain hidden. The craft, if they are real, remain locked away from human eyes. But the story lives on, carried not just by Lazar, but by all who dare to imagine. Because in the end, imagination itself is a form of truth. It is the bridge between what we know and what we have yet to discover. Think of the countless civilizations that might exist in the universe. Think of the stars you see on a clear night, each one potentially home to life. Think of the possibility that we are not alone, and that somewhere, someone may already have crossed the void between worlds. Bob Lazar's story forces us to confront this possibility, not as a dream of science fiction, but as a potential reality suppressed by those who fear what it might mean. As the narration slows, let your mind drift into that space between doubt and belief. Picture the desert, endless and still, with secrets buried beneath its sands. Picture the hangars carved into the earth, the silent craft resting within, waiting for the day when the world is ready to know. Picture Bob Lazar himself, walking quietly through his life, burdened by a truth that will not let him go. And as you fall into rest, remember that the return of Bob Lazar through Jeremy Corbell is not just a story. It is an invitation to wonder, to question, to let your imagination travel beyond the boundaries of what you have been told. Because sometimes the greatest truths are the ones that hide in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough or desperate enough to speak them aloud. The night deepens. The stars above grow brighter. The desert remains silent, and the mystery remains unsolved. But within that silence there is a voice. The voice of Bob Lazar carried forward through time, reminding us that reality is always stranger than fiction, and that the secrets of the universe are closer than we dare to believe.